Hello, and welcome to Social Workers Rise, where we inspire social workers to connect, expand their knowledge, and change more lives than they ever thought possible. We will talk everything social work on every level from micro to macro. We are going to hear stories of social workers who are doing big things, learn new skills, and most importantly, give you actionable steps to make a difference today. Let's go. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Social Workers Rise. It is your host, Catherine, here. Today, I'm giving you some documentation hacks because we all hate documentation. Well, maybe you do. I don't necessarily hate it because I feel like it's a really great opportunity to showcase the work that my clients are doing and to brag on them a little bit and to show them that, hey, this program is working, our interventions are working, and this is how we do it. I will prelude this with this episode's going to be most helpful for you around the narrative notes of documentation. If your notes consist of a bunch of drop-down buttons and clicks, there's not really much I can do to help you make that process any faster. It is what it is. But there are some things that we can do around our narrative notes and to make those a little bit faster. First, before we get into that, if you don't know who I am, you should know. I'm Catherine. I'm the host of the Social Workers Rise podcast. I am a therapist. I've been social working since 2009, so I know a few things. I've done a few notes, and I've used a lot of documentation hacks because it gets crazy out there. Also, too, I do therapy now, currently with clients. I offer career coaching for social workers. And this year in 2024, I'm going to be a published author officially. I'm very excited. The book comes out on February 6th, and I'm a co-author, part of a book called Voices of the 21st Century, Women Empowered Through Passion and Purpose. So really excited about that. And I'll be doing some podcast episodes around my topic of defying the odds and tapping into that inner resilience and inner strength that you have. So that is about me. Also, one last plug. I do have the Rise directory. So if you are looking for clinical supervision support, if you are a clinical supervisor, go ahead, go over there. It's a directory for clinical supervisors in the United States. We support you. We do groups. We do continuing education starting in 2024. We have resources on the website for supervision. Definitely go check it out, risedirectory.com. You will not be sorry. All right, let's hop into this episode. So I have a few hacks that I have learned over the years. And this comes from me primarily working in hospice and doing field visits and just being really, really busy, driving around, not having a whole lot of time at the end of my day to document. And it was getting to the point where I was getting in trouble because I was getting behind on my documentation. And I don't want that for you. I want better for you. So first, make sure that you're checking with your agency for the privacy rules. And we want to always remain HIPAA compliant because we can get into hella trouble if you do not. And I don't want you being fined $1 million because of some HIPAA compliant stuff. So make sure that you are definitely remaining compliant with that. And having great documentation is really focused around, one, providing evidence that you are working with your client and that your client's working, that they're showing up, that you're doing the visits. Effective documentation also helps us avoid legal troubles, right? It helps you avoid looking negligent and really prevents miscommunication. So while it's a pain in the butt, it really, really is important to our client's care. And if you're looking for more support around specifically how to document, that's not what the show's about. You're going to need the course that I created specifically for that. which is called Clinical Essentials for the Future Therapist. This course will walk you through the entire therapeutic process on how to do a proper assessment, how to do proper documentation, how to use CBT, and so much more. So the link for that is in the show notes. Check it out if you're interested. All right. So the first tip that I have for you. Are you ready? This one I used all the time. I'm not sure how legal it was while I was driving, but I did it. Talk to text. And this is a game changer because after my visits or my session, I would get out my phone, my company phone, which was encrypted and secure and all those things. And I would talk out my narrative note. And so it would then create, obviously, a typed up note that I could then go back into when I got home and quickly reread it and edit whatever needed to be edited because sometimes it's not always accurate, but they're getting a lot better. So, talk to text is a huge, huge time saver. The other time saver is going to be templates. So I created my templates through common workflows that I just created at work after being there for a little bit. But you can also use AI to generate more formal templates. I go to ChatGPT and you can just type in create whatever kind of template you want, and it's really good at just making those up for you. The other tip that I have for you is to prioritize the information. So we're not putting their entire life story in here if it's not applicable. We want to really focus in on the most important information that's required for coordination of care. Also, this is the best practice to not really be putting their business out there for everybody to read if it's not or if it's not applicable to their care. So just focus on those key points and prioritize those in your documentation. Leave out any kind of unnecessary details, right? The next tip that I have for you is to make a time, set aside a time to work on your notes because this allows you to get into the flow of writing the notes, of just busting them out, as opposed to doing them one by one scattered throughout the day. It takes time to get into that flow, into that frame of thinking. So if you can just set aside time each day to do this, then that's going to be the most efficient use of your energy so that you can really focus on it. The other tip that I have for you is to utilize cheat sheets. So I mentioned the course, The Clinical Essentials for the Future Therapist. What I did in this course is I created a bunch of cheat sheets for you. And I shared the ones that I use myself in grad school and that I use coming straight out of grad school. Cheat sheets of interventions and assessment lists and what to include on your initial assessment of their presentation, of the biopsycho assessments. All of these are going to give you the words that you need when your brain is just fried, right? It's going to give you the words. It's going to allow you to easily reference these interventions and say, oh, yes, I did this. This is making what I thought was playing puzzles into a much more professional sounding visit, right? For example. So using cheat sheets allows you to just quickly reference them, put them in your notes so that your notes sound a lot more professional and doesn't take you so long to write them. Lastly, well, there's two more lastlies, right? Make sure that you're getting regular training on how to improve your skills. If it's not training through my course, then maybe your work has its own trainings that they can fund. I have heard of social workers getting their work to pay for my training for the clinical essentials. So that's something to look into if you feel like that's going to be helpful for you. And you also just want to stay up to date with the changes and just ensure that you're continuing learning and you have a really good foundation needed to write good notes. A lot of times, if coming out of grad school or with your bachelor's degree, we don't all get the same education. Shocking, I know. But it really is up to you to make sure that you know these skills. If you were never taught them, taught skills around documentation and what to include, what not to include, then you really, really need to invest in extra training around that just for the sake of your clients and for your career. My last tip is to use ChatGPT or AI if you need help in creating goals and objectives. So while you don't want to put in client information, you can definitely pull it up and say, what are goals and objectives for reducing depression in whatever, teenagers, older adults, whoever it is that you're working with, and whatever your goal is, type it in there and see what it kicks out and use your own clinical judgment to see if this is going to be applicable for you and for your client. It can be a huge, huge time saver. So, that is all that I have for you on this Clinical Thursday, my friend. I will be back next week with our next podcast episode called Defying the Odds, Tapping into Your Community. And I'll talk to you then. Bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Social Workers Rise. If you love this episode, be sure to subscribe and text this episode to a friend. If you want more, there are a few ways we can get to know each other and work together. First, definitely subscribe to the Friday resource email list. The link is in the show notes. And that's where you can learn more about the courses I offer, including Clinical Essentials for the Future Therapist and the Pulse Basics for Medical Social Workers. I'll also be sending out occasional tips and resources and other happenings within the social work industry. And for all your clinical supervision needs, be sure to visit risedirectory.com. This is a national directory of clinical supervisors for social workers, and we also provide free resources that you can use within your own clinical supervision. Lastly, if you have more individualized needs, I do offer coaching, individual consultations, and am available for public speaking engagements for social workers and change makers. Lastly, the boring legal stuff, but very important. The information in this podcast is not meant to be a supplement for therapy, professional advice, or clinical supervision. This content is provided as is solely for informational purposes. It is not legal, health, or safety advice. I am not advising you as a therapist. Organizations should engage their own experts to ensure any adopted measures are compliant with applicable laws and standards in their jurisdictions. The opinions expressed by individuals or organizations are their own and do not reflect the views or opinions of Social Workers Rise or Catherine Moore. References to specific products or organizations do not constitute any endorsement or recommendations by Social Workers Rise.